Hey guys, tonight we're heading to the sun-drenched banks of the Nile, where the air smells faintly of silt and wildflowers, and the river grass sways lazily in the breeze. You're barefoot, of course, because sandals are for people with something to prove. The ground is warm beneath your feet, and the reeds whisper secrets as you pass. You're here to gather ingredients, not for a salad, not for a smoothie, but for something far more ancient and oddly comforting, Nubian beer. It's not the kind you'd find in a modern pub, and it definitely won't win any craft brewing awards. But it's thick, earthy, and surprisingly nutritious. You probably won't survive the brewing process without a few mosquito bites and a sunburn shaped like a clay jug. But hey, that's history. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're feeling chatty, drop your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing where you're listening from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge along the riverbank, a woven basket slung over your shoulder, the kind that creaks with every step. The elders told you to gather river grass at dawn, when the dew still clings to the blades and the hippos are too sleepy to chase you. You spot a patch near the bend, just past the fig tree that smells suspiciously like fermented fruit. The grass is long and fibrous, perfect for brewing. You pluck it gently, trying not to disturb the frogs who've claimed this patch as their personal lounge. Barley is next. It's grown in neat rows behind the village, guarded by a goat who thinks he's a pharaoh. You offer him a handful of river grass as a bribe, and he lets you pass with a grunt that sounds vaguely judgmental. The barley is golden, dry, and ready to be mashed. You fill your basket, careful not to crush the delicate heads. The sun climbs higher, and your shadow stretches like a sleepy snake across the field. Back at the village, the brewing circle is already buzzing. Women chatter as they sort grains, and children chase each other with sticks that are definitely not swords, despite their claims. You join the group, laying out your haul on a woven mat. The river grass is rinsed in clay bowls, the barley spread out to dry a bit more. Someone hands you a gourd of yesterday's brew. It's sour, thick, and oddly refreshing. You sip it slowly, trying not to grimace. It's an acquired taste, like fermented oatmeal with a hint of swamp. The elders begin the gathering ritual. It's not formal, but it has rhythm. They hum a tune that sounds like wind through reeds, and you find yourself swaying along. The ingredients are blessed, not with incense or chants, but with laughter and a few off-color jokes about last week's batch that exploded in the sun. You're told to mash the barley with a flat stone, using a circular motion that's supposed to mimic the river's flow. Your arms ache, but the grain begins to break down, releasing a nutty aroma that mingles with the scent of damp earth. River grass is chopped next. It's not just filler, it adds texture, flavor, and a bit of wildness to the brew. You slice it with a bone knife, the kind passed down through generations and sharpened on gossip. The pieces are tossed into the mash, and someone adds a handful of wild dates for sweetness. Historians still argue whether Nubians use dates regularly or only for special brews, but your village swears by them. You stir the mixture, watching it thicken into a paste that looks like something between porridge and swamp pudding. The clay vats are ready. They've been sun-dried and smoked over acacia wood, giving them a faintly sweet scent. You pour the mash in, careful not to spill. The vats are buried halfway in the ground to keep them cool, and covered with woven lids that look like upside-down baskets. Fermentation begins, not with yeast packets or temperature gauges, but with time, patience, and a few whispered prayers to the river spirits. As the sun sets, you sit by the vats, sipping more of yesterday's brew and listening to the frogs sing. The air is thick with the scent of grain, grass, and possibility. You've gathered, mashed, and mixed. Tomorrow you'll stir, strain, and sip, but tonight you rest, knowing that history is bubbling just beneath the surface. You wake up to the sound of goats arguing with birds. The sun is already stretching across the horizon like a lazy cat, and the brewing circle is calling. Today's task, setting up the Nubian brewing station. It's not a sleek stainless steel affair with temperature gauges and digital timers. No, your setup involves clay pits, woven mats, and a lot of squinting at the sky to guess the weather. You start by clearing the brewing area, which is really just a flat patch of dirt near the communal fire pit. The ground is swept with palm fronds, and someone sprinkles crushed acacia bark to keep the ants away. You lay out the clay vats from yesterday, now slightly crusted with the beginnings of fermentation. They smell earthy, like wet bread and river mud. You pretend it's pleasant. The mash from yesterday is thick and bubbling. You stir it with a carved wooden paddle shaped like a fish, because why not? The paddle has been passed down through generations, and there's a rumor that it once belonged to a brewer who could predict the weather based on foam thickness. Historians still argue whether Nubians used foam as a brewing metric or just liked poking it for fun. You add more river grass, chopped finely and soaked overnight. It's slimy, but in a good way, like nature's seasoning. The barley mash gets a second round of mashing, this time with a flat stone that's been warmed in the sun. You press and swirl, watching the grains release their starches. The mixture becomes smoother, almost creamy, like a very ambitious porridge. Someone brings over a pot of warm water from the fire pit. It's not boiling, just hot enough to coax the mash into submission. You pour it slowly, stirring as you go. Steam rises, carrying the scent of grain, grass, and faintly roasted fig. A child nearby wrinkles their nose and declares it smells like grandma's feet. You nod solemnly. That's how you know it's working. The clay pits are shallow and wide, perfect for spreading out the mash to cool. You ladle the mixture in, smoothing it with the fish paddle. The pits are lined with banana leaves, which add a subtle sweetness and keep the mash from sticking. You sit back and admire your work. It looks like a swampy pancake, but you're told that's ideal. A goat wanders over and sniffs the edge of the pit. You shoo him away with a gentle nudge and a stern look. He bleats in protest and trots off to complain to the chickens. You cover the pits with woven mats, weighted down with stones. The mats are made from river reeds and smell faintly of mildew and nostalgia. While the mash cools, you prepare the flavorings. Wild dates are chopped and mashed into a paste. Some brewers add honey, others prefer fermented figs. Today, you're going rogue with a handful of crushed tamarind pods. The elders raise their eyebrows but say nothing. You're either a genius or about to ruin everything. You mix the flavorings into a separate pot, stirring until it resembles a sticky jam. This will be added to the brew tomorrow, once fermentation has begun. For now, it sits near the fire, attracting flies and compliments. A neighbor asks if you're planning to sell your batch. You laugh and say you're brewing for the gods. They nod, unimpressed. The brewing setup isn't just about ingredients, it's about rhythm. You stir, wait, taste, adjust. You listen to the bubbling, feel the heat of the sun, and watch the shadows shift. It's a dance, slow and deliberate. You're not just making beer, you're communing with history. As the day winds down, you check the pits one last time. The mash is cooling nicely and the mats are holding firm. You sprinkle a bit of crushed mint over the top, not for flavor, but to keep the bugs away. The scent is sharp and refreshing, a contrast to the earthy brew below. You sit by the fire, sipping a gourd of last week's batch. It's smoother now, with hints of fig and something you can't quite name. Maybe tamarind, maybe river spirit approval. You lean back, watching the stars emerge, and feel a quiet pride. Your brewing station may be humble, but it's alive with tradition, flavor, and the occasional goat intrusion. You return to the brewing circle the next morning, greeted by the unmistakable scent of fermentation. It's a heady mix of damp grain, river grass, and something that smells suspiciously like old sandals. The clay vats are bubbling gently, their surfaces dotted with foam and the occasional curious insect. You lean in, sniff, and immediately regret it. The brew is alive, and it's not shy about announcing itself. Today's task is fermentation. You grab your carved stirring stick, shaped like a crocodile with a slightly smug expression. It's tradition, apparently. The stick is passed down through brewing families, and legend says it once belonged to a brewer who could tame river spirits with a single swirl. Historians still argue whether Nubians believed in such spirits or just liked blaming them when a batch went sour. You stir slowly, watching the foam shift and settle. The mixture is thicker now, almost gelatinous. It clings to the stick like sleepy porridge and makes a faint squelching sound with every turn. You hum a tune to keep rhythm, something about frogs and fig trees. The elders say the song helps the brew ferment evenly. You suspect it just makes the process less boring. The clay vats are half buried in the ground, which keeps them cool and stable. You check the temperature by pressing your palm to the side. It's warm but not hot, perfect for fermentation. You sprinkle a handful of crushed tamarind over the top, watching it sink slowly into the bubbling mass. The brew hisses in response. You pretend it's a good sign. A neighbor joins you carrying a basket of wild herbs. She adds a pinch of fermented mint and a few strands of dried river moss. You raise an eyebrow, but she shrugs. It keeps the spirits happy, she says. You nod solemnly. Spirits are picky. The foam begins to thicken, forming lazy swirls that look like ancient script. You stir again, slower this time, letting the brew settle into its rhythm. The scent shifts, less swampy, more earthy, like wet bread and sun-dried grass. You take a tentative sip from a ladle. It's sour, tangy, and oddly refreshing. Not bad for something that looks like frog soup. Fermentation takes time. You sit by the vats watching the sun climb higher. Children run past, chasing each other with sticks and shouting about crocodile dung sunscreen. You smile, remembering your own childhood brews, mostly mud and regret. This batch is better. It has potential. You check the foam again. It's forming peaks now, soft and wobbly. That's a good sign. The elders say foam peaks mean the brew is ready to be strained. You nod, pretending you knew that. You cover the vats with woven mats weighted down with stones. The mats are damp from morning dew and smell faintly of river reeds. As the day warms, the brew continues to bubble. You stir every hour, keeping the mixture active. The crocodile stick becomes your companion, its carved eyes watching your every move. You talk to it occasionally, just to break the silence. It doesn't respond, but you're pretty sure it's judging you. By late afternoon, the foam begins to settle. The brew is darker now, richer. You taste it again, smoother, with hints of tamarind and mint. You nod in approval. It's not perfect, but it's drinkable. And in Nubia, that's a win. You prepare the strainers, woven baskets lined with banana leaves. The brew will be poured through these tomorrow, separating the liquid from the mash. For now, you let it rest. The vats are covered, the fire pit is quiet, and the air is thick with the scent of history. You sit back, sipping a gourd of last month's batch. It's aged well, with a smoky flavor that lingers. You watch the sun dip below the horizon, casting long shadows across the brewing circle. The crocodile stick rests beside you, its carved grin catching the last light of day. Fermentation is slow, messy, and unpredictable. But it's also magical. You've coaxed life from grain and grass, summoned flavor from the riverbank, and created something that connects you to generations past. You raise your gourd in a silent toast, to foam, to patience, and to the crocodile who never blinks. You wake to the sound of someone knocking over a clay pot. It shatters with a satisfying crunch, followed by a sheepish oops and a chorus of giggles. The brewing circle is already alive, and today's task is one of the most important, straining the beer. You stretch, yawn, and shuffle over, still half asleep and fully aware that you'll be drinking your breakfast. The vats are uncovered, and the brew has settled into layers. Thick mash at the bottom, cloudy liquid on top, and a thin film of foam that looks like it's plotting something. You grab a woven strainer basket, lined with banana leaves, and position it over a large clay jug. The basket creaks under the weight of the mash, but it holds. You pour slowly, letting the liquid seep through while the solids stay behind, like a very lazy colander. The first few drops are thick and murky, but they clear up as the liquid flows. You taste it, warm, sour, and surprisingly smooth. It's not champagne, but it's got character, and possibly protein. You strain jug after jug, your arms aching and your back protesting. But there's something meditative about it. The rhythm, the scent, the soft gurgle of beer finding its way home. You hand a jug to an elder, who nods approvingly and takes a long sip. "Breakfast," she says, wiping her mouth with the back of her hand. And she's not joking. In Nubia, beer isn't just a drink, it's a staple. You drink it in the morning, at midday, and again when the sun sets. It's hydration, nutrition, and mild entertainment all in one. Historians still argue whether Nubian beer was safer than river water or just tastier, but either way, it became a daily necessity. The alcohol content is low, just enough to keep things interesting without turning the village into a dance party. You sip from your own gourd, the warmth spreading through your chest like a lazy sunrise. Children are given diluted versions, often mixed with herbs or honey. You watch a toddler toddle past with a tiny gourd, sloshing it proudly like a miniature brewer. The elders say it builds character. You suspect it just keeps the kids quiet during nap time. You help distribute the jugs, placing them in shaded spots around the village. Some are for breakfast, others for trade, and a few are set aside for the temple. You carry one to the weaver's hut, where a woman thanks you with a smile and a handful of dried figs. You munch on one as you walk, the sweetness balancing the tang of the beer still on your tongue. The sun climbs higher, and the village hums with activity. Farmers head to the fields, potters shape new vats, and someone starts singing a song about a goat who drank too much and fell into the river. You chuckle, remembering last year's festival when that actually happened. The goat was fine, just embarrassed. You return to the brewing circle to clean up. The mash is scooped out and fed to the animals. Nothing goes to waste. The goats love it, and the chickens get oddly energetic. You rinse the baskets, scrub the vats, and lay everything out to dry in the sun. The crocodile stirring stick gets a special spot, propped up like a tiny guardian. You sit in the shade, sipping the last of your breakfast beer. It's mellow now, with hints of tamarind and mint. You close your eyes, listening to the breeze rustle the reeds and the distant splash of someone falling into the river. Probably the goat again. Beer isn't just a drink here. It's a rhythm, a ritual, a way of life. You've mashed, stirred, strained, and sipped. You've shared jugs and jokes, traded sips for stories, and watched the sun rise through a haze of barley steam. And as you lean back against the warm clay of the vat, you realize something. You're not just drinking history. You're living it. You're summoned to the temple courtyard just after sunrise, a jug of freshly strained beer balanced on your hip. The air is cool, the ground still damp from the night's dew, and the scent of incense wafts lazily from the shrine. Today your brew isn't just for breakfast, it's for the gods, or at least for the priests who claim to speak on their behalf. You approach the altar, a low stone platform decorated with carved river reeds and faded paintings of crocodiles wearing suspiciously smug expressions. A priest nods at you, gesturing to the offering bowls. You pour the beer slowly, letting it splash gently into the clay vessels. The foam settles like a sleepy cloud, and the priest mutters a blessing that sounds like a recipe for lentil stew. Beer offerings are a regular part of Nubian temple life. The gods, it's said, appreciate the effort, even if they don't actually drink the stuff. Historians still argue whether these offerings were symbolic or literal, but the priests seem convinced that a well-fermented jug can earn divine favor. You're not about to argue. Not with someone holding a staff carved from hippo tusk. You sit on a woven mat near the altar, watching the morning rituals unfold. A woman brings a basket of dried figs. Another offers a bundle of river grass tied with red thread. The beer jugs sit in the center, their foam catching the light like golden silk. You sip from your own gourd, the taste mellow and slightly sweet. It's a good batch. The gods should be pleased. The priest begins a chant, low and rhythmic, accompanied by the soft tapping of a drum made from stretched crocodile hide. You hum along, not because you know the words, but because the beat is oddly soothing. The beer seems to hum with it, the foam vibrating ever so slightly. You pretend it's magic, or fermentation. Same difference. You're asked to help prepare the ceremonial jugs. These are special, larger, more ornate, and sealed with wax made from river bees. You pour carefully, avoiding spills and bubbles. The jugs are placed on a reed mat and carried into the inner sanctum, where only the high priest and a very judgmental cat are allowed. You catch a glimpse of the cat. It blinks slowly, as if unimpressed by your pouring technique. Outside, the villagers gather for the communal sip. It's not a party exactly, more like a reverent picnic. Everyone gets a small gourd, and the beer is passed around with quiet nods and murmured thanks. You sit with your neighbors, sipping slowly and watching the sun climb higher. The beer is warm now, but still good. It tastes like barley, river grass, and a hint of fig. Like history in a cup. Someone tells a story about a brewer who once made a batch so potent. The temple dancers forgot the choreography and invented a new festival. You laugh, imagining priests trying to keep up with spontaneous goat-inspired moves. The elders nod knowingly. That was a good year, one says, sipping from her gourd with a smile. You help clean up, gathering empty jugs and rinsing bowls in the river. The water is cool, the current gentle. You watch the foam swirl away, carried downstream like a sleepy cloud. The gods have had their sip, the villagers their share, and the river its offering. You feel a quiet satisfaction. Your beer has traveled far today, from clay vat to altar, from gourd to story. As you walk back to the village, the scent of incense still clinging to your tunic, you think about the role beer plays in this world. It's not just a drink. It's a bridge between people, between generations, between the earthly and the divine. You've brewed, poured, and offered. And in doing so, you've become part of something ancient, something sacred, something slightly foamy. You're back at the brewing circle, but today you're not just a brewer. You're an observer of status. The sun is high, the beer is flowing, and the village is preparing for a feast. And as you'll quickly learn, not all beer is created or distributed equally. You help carry the jugs to the central gathering space, where woven mats are arranged in a loose circle. The elders sit closest to the fire pit, their gourds already filled with the freshest, frothiest beer. You, being somewhere between respected brewer and person who once dropped a jug on a chicken, are seated a few rows back. It's fine. You like the view. The beer is ladled out with care. The first few scoops go to the high-status villagers, elders, priests, and that one guy who claims to have invented a better way to dry river grass. You watch as they sip, nod, and occasionally smack their lips in approval. The foam is thick, the flavor balanced. You're proud, even if your gourd is still empty. Eventually, the ladle reaches your row. You get a generous scoop. No foam, but plenty of flavor. It's warm, slightly tangy, and carries a hint of tamarind. You sip slowly, savoring the taste and the moment. Around you, the chatter grows louder. Someone's telling a story about a beer jug that exploded during a wedding. You laugh, remembering the bride's expression. She still blames the goat. In Nubian society, beer isn't just a drink, it's a social marker. The quality of your pour, the size of your gourd, even the temperature of your brew can signal your place in the village hierarchy. Historians still argue whether this was formalized or just a matter of custom, but the patterns are clear. Foam for the elders, dregs for the kids, and if you're lucky, a second pour when the jugs come back around. You glance at the brewing matriarch, seated near the fire with a gourd the size of a melon. She catches your eye and raises her drink in a silent toast. You nod, honored. She's the one who taught you to stir counterclockwise when the wind blows from the east. Keeps the spirits from getting dizzy, she said. You never questioned it. As the feast continues, you notice the subtle rituals. A young man offers his gourd to an elder before taking a sip himself. A woman pours a splash of beer onto the ground before drinking, a gesture of thanks to the river. A child sneaks a taste from their mother's gourd and makes a face like they've just licked a frog. Everyone laughs. You refill your gourd from a jug that's been sitting in the shade. It's cooler, smoother, and slightly more fermented. You take a long sip, letting the flavor settle on your tongue. It tastes like barley, river grass, and a hint of social mobility. The sun begins to dip, casting long shadows across the mats. The fire crackles, the jugs grow lighter, and the stories grow taller. Someone claims their uncle once brewed a batch so strong it scared away a lion. You raise an eyebrow. The matriarch snorts. It was a jackal, she says, and it was drunk. You help gather the empty jugs, stacking them near the fire for cleaning. The foam has settled, the laughter has softened, and the village hums with contentment. You walk home with a warm belly, a light heart, and a newfound appreciation for the politics of foam. Beer, you realize, is more than a beverage. It's a mirror, reflecting status, respect, and the quiet hierarchies that shape daily life. You may not have gotten the first pour, but you've earned your place in the circle. And tomorrow, when the brewing begins again, you'll stir with a little more pride and maybe, just maybe, a little more foam. You're back in the brewing circle. But today it's less about sipping and more about scrubbing. The tools of Nubian beer making are laid out before you like a sleepy museum exhibit. Clay vats, woven strainers, carved paddles, and a ladle shaped like a crocodile with a chipped snout. You pick it up and give it a respectful nod. It's seen things. Cleaning is a ritual here. You rinse the vats with river water, scrubbing the insides with crushed reeds and a paste made from ash and mint. It smells like a spa for frogs. The foam from yesterday's brew still clings to the edges, stubborn and slightly judgmental. You scrape it away, muttering apologies to the ancestors. The stirring paddles are next. Each one is carved from acacia wood, smoothed by years of use and the occasional goat nibble. You polish them with oil pressed from river nuts, giving them a soft sheen and a scent that's somewhere between earthy and mildly nutty. One paddle has a notch in the handle. Legend says it was bitten by a brewer during a particularly stressful fermentation. Historians still argue whether that counts as a brewing accident or just a snack. You inspect the strainers, woven from palm fibers and lined with banana leaves. They're surprisingly durable, though one has a suspicious hole that looks like it was chewed by something with opinions. You patch it with a strip of linen and hope for the best. The strainers are hung to dry, swaying gently in the breeze like sleepy hammocks. Now comes the fun part, ingredient prep. You gather wild dates from a tree that leans like it's trying to eavesdrop. The fruit is sticky, sweet, and perfect for adding depth to the brew. You mash them into a paste using a stone bowl that's older than most of the village. It's cracked, stained, and revered. You hum as you work, the rhythm soothing and slightly off-key. Someone brings over a bundle of river snails. You blink. For flavor, they say. You nod slowly, pretending you're not mildly horrified. The snails are boiled, mashed, and added to a test batch. You taste it. It's interesting. Salty, earthy, and vaguely chewy. You decide to stick with dates. You experiment with other ingredients. Fermented figs, crushed tamarind, even a handful of dried hibiscus petals. Each adds a unique twist, a whisper of flavor that dances on the tongue. You mix, taste, adjust. The brew becomes a canvas, and you're the sleepy artist with a ladle. The clay vats are ready for another round. You pour in the mash, now enriched with your chosen flavorings. The foam rises quickly, thick and frothy. You stir with the crocodile paddle, watching the brew swirl like a lazy whirlpool. The scent is richer now, sweet, tangy, and faintly floral. You smile. This batch might just earn you a second pour at the next feast. You sit back, sipping a gourd of yesterday's brew and watching the tools dry in the sun. The paddles gleam, the strainers sway, and the vats bubble quietly. You feel a sense of connection, not just to the process, but to the generations who stirred, strained, and sipped before you. Beer making in Nubia isn't just about ingredients. It's about tools, traditions, and the quiet joy of experimentation. You've mashed rivergrass, debated snails, and polished paddles. You've tasted history, one gourd at a time. And as the sun dips low and the crocodile ladle rests beside you, you know tomorrow's brew will be even better. You're up before the sun, summoned by the brewing matriarch herself. She's already seated by the clay vats, her gourd in hand, her expression somewhere between serene and mildly unimpressed. Today, you're shadowing her, not just to learn, but to witness the quiet power of Nubian women in the art of beer making. She gestures for you to sit, then hands you a paddle. It's heavier than yours, carved from dark wood and etched with symbols that look suspiciously like dancing frogs. You stir the vat slowly, mimicking her rhythm. She watches, then grunts. Too fast, she says. You're making the foam nervous. You slow down. The brew responds, settling into lazy swirls. She nods, satisfied. Around you, other women begin to gather, some with baskets of herbs, others with bundles of river grass. The brewing circle is a matriarchal domain, and you're lucky to be invited in. Historians still argue whether Nubian brewing was exclusively female-led or simply dominated by women with better taste, but here, there's no debate. The matriarch begins her morning chant. It's low, rhythmic, and oddly hypnotic. You hum along, trying not to mess up the harmony. She adds a handful of crushed dates to the vat, followed by a splash of honey from her private stash. You raise an eyebrow. She shrugs. For the gods, she says. And for flavor, you help prepare the herbs, mint, tamarind, and a few strands of dried hibiscus. She sniffs each one, nodding or frowning with the precision of a royal taster. One bundle is rejected entirely. Smells like regret, she says. You toss it into the compost pile, where it will probably haunt the snails. The brew begins to bubble, and she stirs with a grace that borders on dance. Her movements are slow, deliberate, and oddly soothing. You try to match her, but your paddle splashes. She sighs. You stir like a goat chasing butterflies. You apologize. She hands you a smaller paddle. Try again. You stir, slower this time, letting the brew guide you. The foam thickens, the scent deepens, and the matriarch nods. Better, she says. Still not elegant, but better. You beam. It's the closest thing to a compliment you've ever received from her. She tells stories as she brews, tales of brewers who could taste the weather, of jugs that sang when the foam was perfect, of a woman who once brewed a batch so smooth it made a priest cry. You listen, captivated. Her voice is soft, her words rich with history and humor. You sip from your gourd, the flavor mellow and sweet. It tastes like barley, honey, and quiet wisdom. The other women join in, sharing jokes and gossip. Someone mentions a goat who's been sneaking sips from the temple jugs. The matriarch snorts. That goat has better taste than most men. Everyone laughs. You nod, pretending you're not slightly offended. You help ladle the brew into ceremonial jugs, each one sealed with wax and marked with a symbol. The matriarch inspects each jug, tapping the sides and sniffing the foam. One jug is rejected. Too eager, she says. Let it rest. You set it aside, whispering apologies to the foam. As the sun climbs higher, the brewing circle hums with energy. The matriarch sips from her gourd, then hands it to you. Taste, she says. You do. It's smooth, rich, and slightly floral. You nod, impressed. She smiles. That's what happens when you stir with respect. You help clean up, rinsing paddles and stacking jugs. The matriarch watches, then hands you a bundle of herbs. For your next batch, she says. Don't waste them. You nod solemnly. You won't. As you walk home, the scent of honey and hibiscus clinging to your tunic, you feel a quiet pride. You've brewed with the best, learned from the wisest, and earned a nod from the matriarch. And tomorrow, when you stir your own vat, you'll do it slowly, deliberately, and maybe, just maybe, with a little elegance. You're standing at the edge of the village, a jug of beer balanced on your shoulder and a satchel of dried figs tucked under your arm. Today you're not brewing, you're bartering. Nubian beer isn't just a local delight. It's currency, diplomacy, and a surprisingly effective icebreaker in trade negotiations. You join a caravan preparing to head north, toward the incense-rich markets of Upper Nubia. Camels grunt, baskets creak, and someone's arguing with a donkey about load distribution. You offer a jug to the caravan leader, who sniffs it, swirls it, and takes a long sip. He nods. Smooth, he says. You're in. Beer travels well in sealed clay jugs, especially when waxed with river bee resin. You pack yours carefully, nestling them in straw and whispering encouragement. The journey is long, and the road is dusty, but your brew is ready to charm traders from all corners of the Nile. As you walk, the landscape shifts, riverbanks give way to rocky paths, and the air grows thick with the scent of myrrh and sun-baked stone. You pass villages where people greet you with cautious smiles and curious glances. You offer a sip and the smiles widen. Beer speaks a universal language. At the first market stop, you set up your mat beside a spice merchant who smells like cinnamon and ambition. You uncork a jug, letting the foam rise gently. A trader from the east approaches, intrigued. He tastes, nods, and offers a pouch of incense in exchange. You accept. It's a good deal. The beer has done its job. Historians still argue whether Nubian beer was a major trade item or just a social lubricant, but here, it's clearly valuable. You trade jugs for linen, pottery, and a bundle of dried fish that smells like regret but tastes like tradition. You sip your own brew, watching the market swirl around you. Colors, scents, voices, all blending into a tapestry of commerce. You meet a woman selling carved amulets. She offers you one shaped like a frog in exchange for a half jug. You agree, mostly because the frog looks like it's winking. You wear it proudly, a symbol of successful bartering and questionable taste. As the sun dips, the market quiets. You sit with fellow traders sharing sips and stories. Someone tells of a brewer who once traded a single jug for a camel. You raise an eyebrow. The matriarch would have demanded two. You pack up, your satchel now filled with goods and your heart with pride. Your beer has traveled, spoken, and earned. You've bartered with incense sellers, charmed amulet makers, and possibly insulted a donkey, all in a day's trade. Back at the village, you unpack your haul. The elders inspect the incense, the linen, and the fish. They nod approvingly, then ask for a sip. You pour, the foam rising like a sleepy cloud. They taste, smile, and declare it market-worthy. You beam. Beer in Nubia isn't just a drink. It's a passport, a handshake, a quiet ambassador. You've brewed it, carried it, and watched it open doors. And tomorrow, when the caravan heads south, you'll be ready, with fresh jugs, a confident stride, and maybe a second frog amulet. You're back at the riverbank, sipping a fresh batch of your brew and watching the sun glint off the water. Today, you're not brewing, you're comparing. Word has spread that a group of Egyptian traders is passing through, and they've brought their own beer. Naturally, a taste test is in order. The Egyptians arrive with jugs wrapped in linen and sealed with wax that smells faintly of lotus. Their brew is lighter in color, thinner in texture, and served in tall ceramic cups that look like they were designed by someone who's never spilled a drink in their life. You offer them a gourd of your Nubian beer. They sip, nod politely, and whisper among themselves. You sip theirs. It's crisp, slightly sweet, and suspiciously refined. You raise an eyebrow. It's good, but is it better? The brewing matriarch joins you, her gourd in hand and her expression unreadable. She sips the Egyptian beer, then yours. Ours has soul, she says. Theirs has polish. You nod. That sounds about right. Historians still argue whether Nubian or Egyptian beer came first, but the styles are clearly distinct. Nubian beer is thicker, heartier, and brewed with river grass and wild herbs. Egyptian beer leans toward barley and emmer wheat, often flavored with dates and honey. You taste both again, trying to pinpoint the difference. Nubian beer feels like a meal. Egyptian beer feels like a toast. The traders explain their brewing process: fermentation in stone vats, straining through linen, and aging in cool cellars. You nod, impressed. Then you describe your method: clay pits, banana leaf strainers, and stirring with a crocodile-shaped paddle. They blink. One asks if the crocodile is symbolic. You shrug. It's just judgmental. You sit together under a fig tree, sharing jugs and stories. One Egyptian trader tells of a brewer who once flavored his beer with crushed lotus petals and claimed it cured heartbreak. You counter with a tale of a Nubian woman who brewed a batch so strong it made a priest dance. The traders laugh. The matriarch snorts. Ours still wins, she says. You compare tools. Egyptian ladles are long and slender. Nubian paddles are wide and carved. Their strainers are linen, yours are woven. Their jugs are tall and narrow, yours are squat and sturdy. You trade a paddle for a ladle just for fun. It feels like diplomacy. As the sun sets, you prepare a communal brew, a mix of Nubian and Egyptian styles. You mash barley and rivergrass, add dates and tamarind, and stir with both paddles. The foam rises, thick and fragrant. You sip. It's strange, but good. Like history in a cup. You sit by the fire, passing the hybrid brew around. The traders nod in approval. The matriarch sips, then shrugs. Still needs more soul, she says. You laugh. She's probably right. Beer, you realize, is more than a drink. It's a reflection of culture, geography, and taste. Nubian beer is earthy, bold, and communal. Egyptian beer is refined, sweet, and ceremonial. And somewhere in between there's a brew that tells both stories. You raise your gourd in a toast, to foam, to friendship, and to the crocodile paddle that now sits beside a lotus ladle. Tomorrow you'll brew again, but tonight you sip slowly, savoring the blend of two worlds. You're sitting under the shade of a fig tree, sipping a lukewarm gourd of beer that tastes faintly of mint and mystery. Today's brew isn't just for pleasure, it's medicine, or at least that's what the elders say. You're about to explore the surprisingly therapeutic side of Nubian beer, where fermentation meets folklore and every sip might cure something, or nothing. The brewing matriarch hands you a jug marked with a red thread. For stomach aches, she says. You nod, trying not to look skeptical. The beer is thicker than usual, with flecks of crushed herbs floating like sleepy confetti. You take a cautious sip. It's bitter, earthy, and oddly soothing. Your stomach doesn't complain, so maybe it works. Nubian medicine is a blend of observation, tradition, and a healthy dose of trial and error. Beer plays a central role, not just as a drink, but as a base for herbal remedies. You watch as a healer adds fermented mint, dried tamarind, and a pinch of river moss to a jug. She stirs slowly, muttering something about balance and foam. Historians still argue whether these brews were truly medicinal or just a clever way to make herbs more palatable, but the results speak for themselves. You help prepare a batch for fever. It includes barley, rivergrass, and a handful of crushed hibiscus petals. The brew is strained, cooled, and served in small doses. You taste it. It's tart, floral, and surprisingly refreshing. A child nearby sips it and immediately declares they feel less hot. You nod. That's science. Another batch is for joint pain. It's thicker, darker, and smells like fermented socks. You stir it with the crocodile paddle, trying not to breathe too deeply. The healer insists it works. You take her word for it. A goat wanders over and sniffs the jug. You shoo it away before it decides to self-medicate. You learn that beer is also used in poultices. The mash is mixed with herbs and applied to bruises, bites, and mysterious lumps. You help spread a paste on a farmer's swollen ankle. He winces, then sighs. Better than goat spit, he says. You agree. There's even a brew for sleep. It's lighter, sweeter, and served warm. You sip it slowly, the flavor mellow and comforting. The matriarch calls it dream juice. You smile. It tastes like barley, dates, and a whisper of fig. You feel your eyelids droop. Maybe it works. You assist in preparing a ceremonial batch for the temple healer. It includes rare herbs, honey, and a splash of river water collected at dawn. The brew is poured into ornate jugs and sealed with wax. You carry them carefully, feeling like a pharmacist with a very relaxed dress code. As the sun sets, you sit with the healers, sipping and sharing stories. One tells of a brew that cured hiccups in a priest who hadn't stopped for 3 days. Another claims beer helped a woman recover from heartbreak, though it may have been the dancing that did the trick. You laugh, sip, and listen. Beer in Nubia isn't just a drink. It's a remedy, a ritual, a comfort. You've brewed for fever, stirred for sleep, and mashed for muscle aches. You've tasted history one gourd at a time. And as the stars emerge and the fig tree rustles gently above you, you feel a quiet peace. Your brew may not be FDA approved, but it's made with care, tradition, and just enough mint to make you believe. You wander into the reed-roofed beer hut just as the afternoon heat begins to settle like a sleepy blanket over the village. The hut is cool, dim, and smells faintly of barley, river grass, and the kind of secrets only fermented drinks can coax out. Today you're not brewing or bartering, you're lounging. Welcome to Nubian tavern culture. The hut is simple: clay walls, woven mats, and a central fire pit that's mostly decorative. Jugs of beer line the shelves, each marked with a symbol: frogs for mild, crocodiles for strong, and a mysterious spiral that no one seems to agree on. You choose a frog jug. It's early, and you're not trying to start a dance-off with the goats. You settle onto a mat, sip from your gourd, and listen. The tavern is alive with quiet chatter, the kind that drifts like smoke and settles into your ears without asking permission. A group of farmers debate the best time to plant barley. A weaver complains about a goat who chewed her loom, and someone whispers about a neighbor who may or may not be hiding a secret stash of honey beer. You sip again. The brew is smooth, slightly sweet, and just cool enough to make you forget the sun. A man nearby offers you a roasted fig. You accept, nodding in thanks. The fig is warm, sticky, and pairs perfectly with the beer. You feel like a connoisseur, or at least a very relaxed villager. Historians still argue whether Nubian taverns were formal establishments or just shaded spots with good gossip, but here it's clear. This is where stories ferment. You hear one about a brewer who once made a batch so strong the village drummer played for 3 days straight. Another tale involves a crocodile who wandered into a beer hut and left with a gourd. No one knows where it went. The gourd, not the crocodile. You join a game of Guess the Ingredient, where patrons sip and try to identify the herbs. You taste tamarind, mint, and something that might be hibiscus, or possibly regret. You guess wrong, but earn a roasted nut for effort. It's crunchy and vaguely celebratory. The matriarch enters, her gourd in hand and her expression unreadable. The room quiets. She sips, nods, and declares the batch acceptable. Everyone exhales. You raise your gourd in silent thanks. She sits near the fire pit, her presence anchoring the room like a well-placed stone. A child wanders in, wide-eyed and clutching a tiny gourd. They're given a diluted brew and a seat near the door. It's their first tavern visit, and they're treated like royalty. You smile, remembering your own first sip. Too sour, too warm, and absolutely magical. The sun begins to dip, casting golden light through the reed roof. The tavern glows, the jugs shimmer, and the chatter softens. You sip slowly, savoring the moment. The beer is mellow now, the story's richer, and the air thick with contentment. You help clean up, stacking jugs and sweeping the mats. The crocodile-marked jug is nearly empty, and someone jokes that it must have been a thirsty spirit. You laugh, your belly warm and your heart full. Nubian taverns aren't just places to drink. They're places to connect, to unwind, to remember. You've sipped, listened, guessed, and laughed. You've tasted history one gourd at a time. And as you step into the twilight, the scent of barley clinging to your tunic, you know you'll be back. Maybe tomorrow. Maybe with a better guess. You're sitting by the fire pit, your gourd half full and your mind drifting, when someone begins a story. It's not just any tale. It's one of Nubian myth, the kind that bubbles up from the riverbanks and settles into the foam of your brew. Tonight, beer isn't just a drink. It's a doorway to folklore. The storyteller is old, with a voice like rustling reeds and a laugh that sounds like it's been fermented. He sips slowly, then begins. There was once a brewer, he says, who tricked a crocodile with a jug of honey beer. You lean in, intrigued. The crocodile, apparently, had been terrorizing the village, stealing goats and scaring children. The brewer, tired of the chaos, brewed a batch so sweet, so smooth, that even the crocodile couldn't resist. He placed the jug by the river, then hid behind a fig tree. The crocodile sniffed, slithered over, and took a long sip. It blinked, burped, and promptly fell asleep. The village rejoiced, and the brewer was declared a hero. Historians still argue whether this tale is based on a real event or just a creative excuse for overbrewing, but either way, it's a classic. You sip your own beer, imagining the scene. The crocodile, the brewer, the sleepy burp, it all feels oddly plausible. Another tale follows, this one about river spirits who demand a sip from every jug before it's served. If the foam doesn't rise, they're displeased. You glance at your gourd. The foam is lazy but present. You exhale. Folklore weaves through Nubian brewing like river grass through clay. There's the tale of the beer-loving moon goddess who taught women to stir with rhythm. The story of a brewer who could taste lies in the foam. And the legend of a jug that sang when the brew was perfect. You ask if anyone's heard it sing. The matriarch snorts. Once, she says. It was a frog. You help prepare a batch for storytelling night. It's sweeter than usual, with extra dates and a splash of honey. The foam rises quickly, thick and golden. You stir slowly, whispering a chant you barely understand. It feels right. The brew hums with possibility. Children gather, wide-eyed and clutching tiny gourds. They sip, giggle, and listen. The stories flow, of brewers who danced with spirits, of jugs that floated upstream, of a goat who brewed a batch so strong it forgot how to bleat. You laugh, sip, and feel the warmth spread. You learn that certain brews are named after myths. Crocodile's nap is thick and sweet. River Whisper is light and floral. Moon Stir is brewed only during full moons, and Frog Song is reserved for festivals. You taste each one, savoring the layers of flavor and story. As the fire crackles and the stars emerge, the tales grow softer, sleepier. Someone hums a tune about a brewer who fell in love with a river spirit. You sip, imagining the romance, foam, reeds, and whispered promises. The matriarch rolls her eyes. She left him for a fisherman, she says. You nod. Love is complicated. Beer in Nubia isn't just fermented grain, it's memory, myth, and magic. You've sipped stories, stirred legends, and tasted tradition, and as the night deepens and your gourd empties, you feel a quiet joy. You're part of the tale now, one more voice in the foam. You're standing in the brewing circle, but something feels off. The clay vats are still here, the paddles still carved, the river grass still swaying in the breeze. But the rhythm is different. Today, you're witnessing a shift. The old ways are fading, and the new ones are bubbling up, not always gently. You watch as a younger brewer sets up a metal pot over a fire pit. It gleams in the sun, polished and precise. No banana leaves, no crocodile ladles, just a shiny ladle that looks like it belongs in a palace kitchen. You raise an eyebrow. The matriarch snorts. Too clean, she mutters. The brew begins, but it's faster now. The barley is ground with a stone mill, the herbs measured with carved spoons, and the fermentation tracked with a sundial that someone insists is more accurate. You sip a sample. It's smooth, crisp, and missing something. The foam rises, but it doesn't dance. Historians still argue whether this shift was inevitable or just fashionable, but the signs are clear. Traditional brewing is declining. Clay vats gather dust, woven strainers hang unused, and the crocodile paddle sits in the corner like a retired storyteller. You pick it up, give it a respectful stir, and feel the brew respond, just a little. Imported hops arrive from the north, packed in linen and smelling like ambition. They're added to the brew, changing the flavor, the texture, the soul. You taste it. It's bitter, bold, and oddly modern. You nod. It's good. But is it Nubian? The matriarch watches, her gourd untouched. They brew with precision, she says. We brew with memory. You sit beside her, sipping slowly. The old brew is thicker, sweeter, and filled with stories. The new one is efficient, clean, and slightly lonely. You help clean the clay vats, even though no one used them today. You scrub gently, whispering thanks. The foam from yesterday's batch still clings to the edges, stubborn and proud. You smile. It remembers. A child asks why the old tools aren't used anymore. You explain gently. Times change, tastes shift, and sometimes people forget. But the stories remain. The crocodile paddle still knows the rhythm. The clay still holds the scent of barley. And the river still hums the brewing song. You prepare a small batch the old way, just for yourself. You mash the barley with a flat stone, stir with the paddle, and strain through banana leaves. The foam rises slowly, lazily, like it's waking from a nap. You sip. It's imperfect, uneven, and absolutely magical. As the sun sets, you sit by the fire, your gourd warm, and your heart full. The new brew may take over, but the old one still whispers. In the foam, in the scent, in the stories. You've brewed with clay, with memory, with soul. And tomorrow you'll stir again, maybe with metal, maybe with tradition, but always with care. You're seated on a woven mat beneath a star-speckled sky, your final jug of beer resting beside you like a sleepy companion. Tonight you're not brewing, bartering, or storytelling. You're reflecting. The foam has settled, the fire has dimmed, and the echoes of Nubian brewing linger in the air like a soft hum. You sip slowly, the brew mellow and familiar. It tastes like barley, river grass, and memory. Around you, the village quiets. The clay vats are empty, the paddles cleaned and stacked, the banana leaves folded neatly. The brewing circle sleeps, but its spirit remains. You think of the first batch you stirred, awkward, uneven, and judged by a goat. You remember the matriarch's lessons, the crocodile paddle's rhythm, the foam that rose like a lazy cloud. You've brewed for breakfast, for trade, for healing, and for myth. You've sipped with elders, bartered with strangers, and listened to jugs that may or may not have sung. Historians still argue whether Nubian brewing was art, science, or sacred ritual. You know it was all three. It was rhythm and patience, flavor and foam, laughter and lore. It was community in a gourd, tradition in a vat, and soul in a stir. You trace the legacy forward, into Sudanese kitchens where barley still simmers, into festivals where honey beer flows, into stories told over warm jugs and sleepy fires. The tools may change, the ingredients may shift, but the heart remains. Brewing is memory. Brewing is connection. You help clean the last jug, rinsing it in the river and whispering thanks. The water is cool, the current gentle. You watch the foam drift downstream, carrying your story with it. You smile. It's a good ending. You sit back, the stars above, the scent of barley around you, and the quiet hum of history in your ears. You've brewed, sipped, and remembered. And now, you rest. Wind down. 300 words. The fire crackles softly, its glow fading into embers as the night deepens. You lie back on the mat, the clay jug beside you still warm from the day's sun. The air is thick with the scent of river reeds and distant fig trees, and the breeze carries the faint rustle of banana leaves drying in the dark. Your body feels heavy, but in a good way, like you've stirred the past into something gentle and lasting. The stories you've heard, the brews you've tasted, the laughter shared over foam and fig, they settle into your bones like a lullaby. You close your eyes, letting the rhythm of the river guide your breath. The crocodile paddle rests nearby, its carved grin catching moonlight. You think of the matriarch's chant, the child's first sip, the goat who danced. All of it blends into a soft, sleepy haze. The beer you brewed today will be sipped tomorrow, its flavor carrying whispers of your hands, your choices, your care. You feel the earth beneath you, warm, steady, familiar. The stars above blink slowly like they're nodding off too. The village sleeps. The jugs rest. The foam has stilled. And you, dear brewer, have earned your dreams. Let the night hold you gently. Let the stories hum in your ears. Let the river carry your breath. You've brewed history. Now, let it lull you to sleep.